Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi with you, taking a look at the latest around the National Football League. Joe, how are you feeling mid-May at this point, kind of in the NFL calendar? Are you in a good space? Are you enjoying the time off, if you will, from major NFL news? Or are you kind of chomping at the bit to get this season going?
I'm actually chomping at the bit, Kevin, to get the season going. I mean, we had the draft just about a month ago, and we let it settle in, and now we have obviously, camp on the horizon, but it's still about 8 weeks away, and that is a problem, for the football fan. Let's get to action. Let's get to late August and Labor Day weekend, where college football obviously kicks off and then prepares us for the Thursday night action week number one. But this is what it's all about. The ability to find value in these markets in the offseason is critical to getting a jump for the regular season. And you and I have done a great job over the past few years of finding situations and finding markets to potentially capitalize on. And this is where value could be uncovered.
Yeah, one market that I'm really excited to talk about, and will likely take up the bulk of our show here today, is the starting quarterback market. We have right now 5 different week 1 starting quarterbacks up in the air, according to odds makers. Some through health, some just through, straight up competition. But I will say there can be money made here. And, look, I know sometimes it almost feels like playing dirty pool, but, we got to get in where we can, similar to betting the draft, right, Joe? When, hey, news breaks, let's act now. This line's going to move. I remember, was it, 2 years ago when it was Minshew versus Aiden O'Connell. And that news came out that the job was going to go to Gardner Minshew. And, that market didn't move as quick as, maybe if I were to announce a starting quarterback is out in the middle of a week, right? A game line might move. So there could be some real value here in these markets. The teams that we're going to talk about today, Las Vegas and Kansas City. When you talk about that AFC West, we've got the Browns, the Falcons, and then some questions around Arizona as well. I figure, Joe, we go to what is perhaps the most straightforward of the bunch, and the one where we have the strongest favorite, which is Kansas City. Now, that is not really a quarterback battle, of course. It is a injury question around Mahomes at minus 720 for him to be the week 1 starter. What does raise my eyebrow just a bit, Joe, is that Justin Fields is plus 500. They decided to post any other quarterback at 35-1, which would almost suggest hey, if Mahomes can't go, maybe they'll give it to someone else. That doesn't feel likely. It almost feels like for lack of a better term, cash grab. Hey, if people throw $1 on it, why not? But that's certainly not coming in. How confident are you that Mahomes will be the week 1 starter for Kansas City?
I'm 50-50, and I told you this last time you and I spoke. And it's not a knock on Pat Mahomes in any capacity, Kevin. He's clearly not just the face of the franchise, but he's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best modern day, next to Tom Brady. 3 Super Bowls under his belt. But we look at this situation similar to the situation with Joe Burrow with the calf injury just a couple of seasons ago. And we said, hey, you don't want to rush Joe Burrow back too soon, because if he gets injured, he's so important to that franchise that if he goes down in the first month of the regular season, your playoff and Super Bowl hopes are washed down the drain within the first week or potentially month of the regular season. Pat Mahomes is coming off an ACL injury. You want to make sure he's 100% healthy before you rush him back. And I know you and I debated that potentially Kansas City would look at the schedule and say, okay, can they win 3 games? Can they win 2 games? Are they going to be up against it in the first month of the regular season? And that potentially will gauge whether Mahomes is under center in week number 1. But I look at it just strictly from the knee and the health perspective. He comes back 85, 90%, and he's ginger and he gets hurt. and is out of that lineup, just wash this season away. Now, we saw Justin Fields be in this situation with Russell Wilson a couple of years ago or 3 years ago with Pittsburgh, and he wound up being the week 1 starter because Russell Wilson couldn't go. I think it's 50-50 right now.
Yeah, I think it's odd because I can tell that for those around Mahomes, he is desperate to be out there week 1. He is adamant. It is almost seemingly taking it as a challenge to be out there week 1, perhaps proving people wrong. And while that is admirable, that is not necessary. And it is potentially not even wise if that extra week or 2 were to make the difference, to your point, Joe, of being 80% and 100%. But speaking of percent, minus 720, the implied probability is 87.8%. So to Joe's 50-50, there's quite a bit of, value the other way. One could argue it's this thing where I don't think Mahomes, Joe, should be as strong a favorite as he is to be the week 1 quarterback. But based on the way he and the Chiefs and the people who cover this team are talking about it, I would be very surprised if he wasn't the week 1 quarterback. Is kind of, and I think maybe you feel somewhat similar.
Well, yeah, I mean, on paper, yes. Let's say he is 80%, or let's say, to your point, 87% healthy. Let's give him 90. Heck, give him 92. Can he go higher than this? I mean, yeah, he could start week 1. That is the upside. Yeah. The downside is he doesn't start the first couple of weeks of the regular season. That's where the value is. Let's say he's trending to be on pace to be the week 1 starter. He has a minor setback, Kevin. All of a sudden, that bet goes the other way, right? So my point is, here we are about, 4 months out for the regular season, 3 months for, let's say, camp or in that. He's not playing in the preseason. If anything, maybe they'll give him a series. They're not going to risk Pat Mahomes coming off an ACL injury to play in the preseason, are they? I mean, that's a little risky. So, and let's say he does go out there. All of a sudden now he gets knocked around and faces a minor setback. All of a sudden now that bet becomes maybe 30-70 the other way, and then you have more value of him not starting week 1 than Justin Fields being under center. I potentially would take the shot at the 5-1 for Justin Fields because, again, love him or hate him, he's still a quarterback that has experience. We know he can run the football. With the addition of Kenneth Walker, now you have a potential dynamic rushing attack to take the pressure off the passing game. And if Spags has elevated the defense like we believe to some capacity in the draft, you don't have to all of a sudden air it out 40 and 50 times per game.
I think the preseason point is an interesting one. It's impossible to think Mahomes is going to play in the preseason because we're having a conversation right now about whether or not he will play in the regular season. But why I think it's interesting, why I think it's smart to bring up by Joe, the Chiefs are one of the teams who believe in the preseason, who play starters multiple preseason games, and that obviously meaning it would include Patrick Mahomes. And again, maybe it's less about will Pat appear in the preseason. I think all the odds would suggest no, but does that throw off some rhythm in Kansas City? If Andy Reid has told us he's found those reps important, if the results often, by the way, are Mahomes being, incredible early season, which he often is, just check the record in September, it's something that I think store away when we're looking at KC Lions early season and what to potentially expect from that team. Plenty more quarterback battles after the break on SportsGrid. Let's stay in the AFC West, and I think we have a lot more intrigue around this market in Las Vegas, where Kirk Cousins is the favorite to be the Week 1 starter at minus 200. Fernando Mendoza, the number 1 overall pick this past April, is at plus 168. They are listing any other QB at 20 to 1. I don't even know what would have to happen for a third person to be the quarterback for Las Vegas. Joe, are you surprised to see Cousins at minus 200 for the Week 1 starting job?
No, it's sort of right. I want to say a little bit similar to the market that we saw with AR and Daniel Jones last year. What was Daniel Jones? I think at one point was plus 150, 160 in the market. I could be wrong. Maybe he was plus 185 at one point. But you have a veteran. You don't, to your point, have to rush Fernando Mendoza, even though we believe he is going to be the face of the franchise with Clint Kubiak and that team. You have the ability to have a similar situation to what we saw with Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart last year, right? Russell Wilson starts, let's say, a handful of games after he tops out or the offense sputters or at least doesn't win games the way the coach and let's say fan base believe, then you go on to the younger quarterback. I don't think maybe having Mendoza sit for 2 or 3 games in the month of September is all that bad. What I do believe is if Kubiak were to roll the dice with Cousins and then stay with him through October into November, I think that would be a disservice to him because you want to get this team ready for year number 2. So again, I think it would be a small window that Kirk Cousins potentially starts. You understand the preparation needed to attack maybe an NFL game a little bit different than college, and we've seen Mendoza be prepared. And what better pro than to learn from than Kirk Cousins, a locker room type of guy. But I think you run that gray area, Kevin, of does Kubiak then all of a sudden win some games and say he doesn't want to relinquish the reins to Mendoza midseason? That would be a problem.
So this is probably of the 5 we are going to discuss today, the one I'm most interested in betting. I talked to you, Joe. Yeah. So we talked about the season-long numbers on Fernando Mendoza, I guess what would have been a week ago at this point. And those Mendoza numbers were, you could tell, he was going to have to play a lot of the season in order to get close, to have any type of chance. And those numbers have moved quite a bit, actually. So at the time, it was 2,700 and a half. Same exact book. It's now 2,350 and a half. So clearly just taking a ton of money on that under. And, if you're holding that under, perhaps then maybe they didn't even take money. Maybe they kind of themselves realized they were they were kind of positioned in a way that needed Mendoza to actually hit the over. And I'm not sure that's what they wanted. They've adjusted it nevertheless. I mean, that's a significant amount they've chopped off. They've chopped 350 yards off of the price already. The reason, though, that I'm not, as someone who was really considering that under, Joe, kicking myself for not betting it is you're betting a minus 114 in April, and you do not get paid. They're not going to do the math on it for you, right? Where you're like, look, he's going to have to throw for 390 yards a game. You're not getting paid until the season ends, flatly. So you're talking about, end or early to mid-January when you were to get that back, where if Mendoza's the week 1 starter, you don't like that bet as much. So you go Cousins at minus 200, but you're getting paid out as soon as that game kicks off. First game of the Raiders season, if Kirk Cousins takes that snap, you're getting paid. And Joe, if Kirk Cousins isn't the week 1 starter, I would have to imagine it was injury. They've talked about the idea of Mendoza not playing the entire season. Maybe that's ridiculous. But it would be equally ridiculous to say that and then start him week one, if you want to bring he's supposed to be the youngest week one starting quarterback. You want to bring him along slowly. You to make the decision to bring Kirk Cousins in. And this is the main thing I come back to, Joe. Is there any world Kirk Cousins agreed to come here without a promise that he was going to be given the job to start the season? I can't imagine that.
Well, again, that's what we said about Russell Wilson with the Giants, right?
But he got the job to start week one.
He did get the job.
It felt silly. Yeah, but he did.
No, he did get the job, and then they relinquished it, after the month of September to Jackson Dart. And they obviously brought in Jameis prior to that. And we thought Jameis was, a veteran type of quarterback to coach up or mentor potentially Jackson Dart, another locker room guy. So, yes, I think that maybe they might have made you could say they gave Kirk Cousins the vote of confidence. Hey, you're the inside track to be the starter. We want you to be the starter. Come and we'll see how it plays out. And I think Kirk was looking for just, maybe a change of scenery as well. And he played his best towards the end of the regular season, led them on winning streaks. He dominates Tampa Bay with a great performance, and he looked like the old Kirk Cousins of old. And now in Clint Kubiak's scheme, you have Brock Bowers, you have some talent there, and you have a running attack if you can get the offensive line together. So I still would take a shot on Mendoza, but I understand what you're saying, that it could be Kirk Cousins under center week number one.
This is the thing that I am kind of stuck on, are they entering camp giving each guy a chance to win the job? Because if they are, I don't know if they, I get what you're saying, but it doesn't mean they're doing it, right? I'm not sure. By the way, if you want to give Kirk the job, there's no benefit to saying we're having a competition. Because then either Mendoza wins it and you have to go back on what you wanted, or Mendoza loses it and we now have to go, wait, Mendoza lost the job to Kirk Cousins? Like, you're just better off giving it to Kirk. That is the path of least resistance here for the Las Vegas Raiders to back up what they've said. At minus 200, Cousins makes it through camp. It is tempting. Plenty more to get to here in Pro Football Today.
Over the summer where there's drastic changes and gas drops down to $3 a gallon, $2.50 a gallon in some states, and then you have some of the price markets go down. You ride that momentum is what Joe's talking about. So if you say right now, which party will win the U.S. House, and you think it's the Republicans currently trading at 20%, you take them now, and if good press comes, that turns into 25% and 30%, then you have the option to cash out.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
There is a pick tonight that Gabe has that, to some degree, I find completely outrageous. Then I looked at it a second longer, and it might be a really smart angle.
I like to test them a little bit.
I like
to test them a little bit.
I like that a lot.
Oh, okay. You don't know? You don't know this team name? You should. You're in the sports business.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Number one, who asked for this? Nobody, but nobody asked for a bump up in the number of teams in both the men and the women's basketball tournament from 68, including the 4 play-in teams, to 76. And by the way, it looks like it is a near-done deal. ESPN and ABC News reported this morning that's very close to being done. It could be announced by the end of this week.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
sometimes you go into a conversation having an idea of where it's going to go. It makes you chuckle. We'll stay out west with our starting quarterback battles. 3 options for the Arizona Cardinals, who many believed would have drafted Ty Simpson maybe somewhere in round 1, and they instead saw Simpson come off the board 13 in division to the LA Rams. So their options are Jacoby Brissett, minus 330, Gardner Minshew, plus 420, or Carson Beck at plus 750. Joe, what stands out to you?
Well, I mean, the fact that, and I understand he put up numbers last year, but the fact that Jacoby Brissett is still in the conversation is absolutely crazy. And I understand he put up numbers, but he's a human turnover machine as well. I mean, he had 2 strip sacks against Seattle that went for touchdowns for DeMarcus Lawrence. And this team is in a major rebuild now with Jeremiah Love. You have young talent there. What do you get out of Marvin Harrison Jr.? Can he be this elite wide receiver that we believe? Trey McBride is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, but this team is in a major rebuild. They have defensive talent. Can he coach it up? If we're talking about those 3 guys, Minshew, Brissett, and Carson Beck, you just start Carson Beck and hope for the best. That is the bottom line. I mean, but that doesn't mean, Kevin, that I believe Carson Beck is an NFL quarterback. I'm sorry, I don't think he is. I think Carson Beck maybe has the physical attributes, height, weight. I don't think he's got the arm strength. I think he throws a flat ball. I think at times he goes through these mental lapses, especially in big games. A majority of his throws weren't vertical downfield. It was underneath, on slip screens and hitches. He needs a wide open pocket. He's certainly not as mobile as some of the other quarterbacks that we've seen in recent years. Even though he scored touchdowns on the ground, he's certainly not Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels in terms of athleticism. But where are you going with this team? I mean, you got rid of Gannon, who was supposed to be a defensive wizard, and the defense was terrible. You have an underrated head coach, supposedly. You have offensive weapons. Throw in the quarterback and see if you can win 5 or 6 games. I don't. Why are you going with Jacoby Brissett? I don't get it.
So I'll make the Brissett case. I just want to say I owe you an apology.
Why?
I was positive you were going to try to make the Minshew case. I thought you were really going to go for it.
No, I mean, Kevin, let me just say this. The fact of my affinity and love for Gardner Minshew is strictly as a backup quarterback in the right setting. When you have Brissett and you have Gardner Minshew, it's the same person, just different, physical attributes. I think Gardner plateaus with the team, and so does Jacoby Brissett. They're not giving you any option to potentially overexceed expectation.
Well, so that's why to me
could be that outlier. I mean, just because you don't know until he steps out onto the field. I personally would have taken a shot on a different quarterback. If it was me as the GM, I would have rolled the dice with Taylon Green as opposed to Carson Beck. But that's just me.
Yeah, so for me, I find Minshew to be like an unacceptable answer because it doesn't make any sense. You can make sense of Brissett, you can make sense of Beck, right? Joe laid out the Beck case. He's a young rookie. We haven't seen him before. Maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. That's the case. And if he's bad, all good. We're drafting a quarterback next year. It's a straightforward case I have no issue with. The case for Brissett is he was good enough to give the guys that really matter on this team a chance to shine. That's what he was. He was good enough to give Trey McBride a chance to prove he's one of the 3 best tight ends in football. He was good enough to give Michael Wilson the chance to break out. And he was good enough to keep the side eyes directed at Marvin Harrison Jr. going on because, Marv, you can't really blame everybody else at some point. And at some point, it's going to be about you. And I think that if you want to go with a guy in Jacoby Brissett to give McBride and Love and Wilson and Harrison their chance to shine, that is absolutely valid. And if there comes a point in the season where you go, okay, it's no longer Brissett, you can give Carson Beck that opportunity. I think Minshew being on the roster in case Brissett gets injured too early before you're ready to go to Beck is fine. But Minshew, to me, is a non-option when we are talking the opening season starter for Arizona. We'll go to Cleveland next. Pro Football Today, taking a look at some of these starting quarterback battles. Kansas City, not a battle. It's just will Mahomes be out there? Vegas, maybe not a battle. Just we are going to give Mendoza time. We want Cousins to start. Arizona could be a battle. It could be. I don't know if Beck's realistically going to be able to beat out Minshew or Brissett, but it could be open. Brissett's still a heavy favorite. Cleveland, we might have a battle. Deshaun Watson versus Shedeur Sanders versus Dylan Gabriel versus Taylon Green. All right, let's get this part of it out of the way. The Dylan Gabriel pick is one of the most ridiculous picks in the history of the National Football League. Honestly. Him sitting there at 55-1 and it being completely an uninteresting bet is an indictment on that selection. They did take him in the third round. They drafted Dylan Gabriel 50 picks ahead of Shedeur Sanders. 50 picks. That's almost 2 full rounds of selections. And Shedeur is in the mix, and Dylan Gabriel is not. With that said, Watson is the favorite right now, Joe. What do you make of this Brown starting quarterback market?
I mean, it's certainly, cluttered. You could say that with 4 quarterbacks that you could make the argument could start. I mean, if it were me, just take Dylan Gabriel out of the mix. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think when we looked at Dylan Gabriel throughout his career at UCF and Oregon. He was a good college quarterback. Never looked at him as an elite quarterback to make it on the next level. And I thought he got exposed in the Rose Bowl 2 years ago by the Ohio State defense and Jim Knowles. So, again, when you look at that team and you look at that play, you just say there's no way Dillon Gabriel has a shot to start for this team ever again moving forward, especially when he didn't put up numbers in the offensive scheme and Shedeur Sanders did. I mean, Shedeur Sanders made Fannin a household name at the tight end position. I mean, he put up numbers that you said, okay, if we could build around them, you have a shot for Shedeur Sanders. Now, when we look at the market and we see that Deshaun Watson is minus 156, I feel like Cleveland, due to the situation with Haslam and the ownership, and due to the money that's already guaranteed for him, you have to give him a shot to see if he's 100% healthy, and he could obviously make a starting role. I mean, how big is that window? It should be a week. You know, you put him under center, see if he could go in a preseason game. If he doesn't go, that's it. He's done. You move on from him. To me, it's between Shedeur Sanders and Taylor Green, and 80-1 on Taylor Green, Kevin, is a lottery ticket. He could be a Jaden Daniels type of player. He's certainly the running style of Jaden Daniels. He's big. He's 6'6", 225 pounds. Is he raw as a passer? Absolutely. But you know what? If he gets into a football game, he's going to make things happen. And his team at Arkansas was in games every single week against the best teams in the conference, and I think he could play in this league. I've said it. Out of all the quarterbacks in this draft class, to me, Taylor Green has the most upside and could be a quarterback, maybe not on the Browns, but could be a starter in this league in 2 or 3 years.
So I have respected your Taylor Green optimism, and in some ways I'm surprised the NFL didn't share more of it, right? Like, I think you would have understood if a team took the tools in round 1, which I'm surprised that he lasted all the way to the 6th round. However, I do not think Taylor Green has a chance to win the week 1 job. I think he could start if things go off the rails in Cleveland. I don't think week 1. I don't think Dillon Gabriel. The word out of Cleveland is Todd Monken wants to name his starter before camp. Now, that does not mean there then won't be a battle in camp, right? But it's going to certainly be a leg up. And I think that, you know, getting those reps, it's going to kind of set the tone. And some reporters have said Watson has the inside track. Some reporters have said Shedeur has the inside track. Deshaun Watson could look like Joe Montana compared to Shedeur Sanders, and I wouldn't dare let him start another game for me if I were the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns made the decision to trade for Watson, and it is maybe the single worst trade in the history of sports. He was either injured or awful. And there were times Kevin Stefanski had other quarterbacks in, and they were making the playoffs. And then Watson would be out there, and it was just absolutely terrible. If I am reading this contract correctly for Deshaun Watson, he is going to be off of this football team after this season. He might as well already be off of this football team now. There's no way Deshaun Watson is on the Browns roster moving forward. How it's all been like, I don't want to say we forgot, but Watson, even if he worked out, there would have been all of the off-field stuff would have kind of loomed over it and made for some uncomfortable convos. The Watson convos have actually been comfortable because he's just that bad. Like, the decision is so easy because he's that awful at football when he's on the field. The idea, like, oh, he's had a lot of time to figure it out. Cool, figure it out somewhere else. How the Browns, Joe, could have Shedeur in the building with some real fanfare and pass him by for Deshaun Watson, I can't imagine even an organization like the Browns, I can't imagine even the Browns being that dysfunctional.
I can't imagine it either, Kevin, in the sense of if Todd Monken wants to name a starter prior to, any type of play, exhibition or regular season, like meaning during camp, how do you make that assessment on a quarterback that is coming off an Achilles tendon surgery? Oh, not one, but two. I mean, explain that to me. We had concerns about Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, who were, head and shoulders where Deshaun Watson was from a play perspective. Deshaun Watson does not have a 300-yard passing performance in the history in the Browns uniform. Joe Flacco does, others do, but Deshaun Watson doesn't. Was that based solely on Kevin Stefanski? Are we going to all of a sudden expect Todd Monken to just, cultivate Deshaun Watson from his days in Clemson and Houston? I mean, I just, that is why when you said he wants to name the starter, Kevin, prior to like preseason, how is that possible? He could look great in 7-on-7 drills, and then he takes one step back and injures himself. There goes that assessment. How could you not watch this guy play football?
Yeah, I don't understand it either. I really
joke.
don't.
He's a joke at this point.
And again, I'll say this though. This is try and give the people whose job it is a bit of credit, right? That it does look good for Shedeur if you pretend this is a back and forth and then name Shedeur the guy, right? There's a confidence boost to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I don't know if that's what they're doing. They might. What? Let's be very clear about this. I think we've shown the odds a few times. Watson's the favorite right now. The books aren't doing that by mistake. The idea is Watson's going to be the guy. I'm not running to bet Shedeur because maybe the Browns are this crazy, but man, that is some tough stuff. Atlanta. Wow. Next.
Go over the summer where there's drastic changes and gas drops down to $3 a gallon, $2.50 a gallon in some states, and then you have some of the price markets go down. You ride that momentum is what Joe's talking about. So if you say right now, which party will win the U.S. House, and you think it's the Republicans currently trading at 20%, you take them now, and if good press comes, that turns into 25% and 30%, then you have the option to cash out.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
There is a pick tonight that Gabe has that, to some degree, I find completely outrageous. Then I looked at it a second longer, and it might be a really smart angle.
I like to test them a little bit.
I like that.
To test them a little bit.
I like that a lot.
Oh, you don't know? You don't know this team name? You should. You're in the sports business.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Number one, who asked for this? Nobody, but nobody asked for a bump up in the number of teams in both the men and the women's basketball tournament from 68, including the 4 play-in teams, to 76. And by the way, it looks like it is a near-done deal. ESPN and ABC News reported this morning that it's very close to being done. It could be announced by the end of this week.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Pro Football Today, we've gone through these starting QB battles. We'll talk a little NFL schedule release before we get out of here. But, Joe, the Atlanta battle is... So, again, we've talked through 4 so far. This is our 5th. Kansas City, not a battle. It's just will Mahomes play? Be healthy, right? Las Vegas, it's not. It might be a battle. It might just be our plan is to give Kirk the job. Arizona definitely could be a battle, but it's not all that exciting because they're not supposed to be very good. The quarterbacks aren't very good. Cleveland might be a battle. But, again, the contenders don't all seem to be that good. The Browns aren't expected to be that good. And then there's Atlanta. And I don't know, man. Like, here's the difference, okay? When you look around, the Atlanta Falcons are supposed to be real deal division contenders. They're supposed to be. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, bringing in Kevin Stefanski. They're supposed to be the real deal. And the 2 quarterbacks that are in the mix here with respect to Trevor Siemian, Michael Penix went in the first round, pick 8, where the counterparts, right? Caleb Williams looks like he's going to be an MVP candidate moving forward. Drake May looks like he's going to be an MVP candidate moving forward. Jaden Daniels, if health holds, looks like he's going to be an MVP candidate moving forward. Penix has actually been exciting to watch when healthy. Can't stay healthy. You have J.J. McCarthy, obviously, from that bunch, and he might be a mess as well. And then there's Tua, a super polarizing player. Now, there aren't any really seemingly people left who think that Tua is or has a chance to be elite quarterback. But, you know, the scale of how bad Tua is still, I think, ranges quite a bit. And sometimes guys get in different situations and optimism comes forward. So, Joe, what do you make of Michael Penix versus Tua Tagovailoa?
I think there's no doubt Penix is starting. I mean, this organization has done a disservice for Michael Penix, in my opinion. I'm sorry. I mean, to have Tua come in, he couldn't get the football to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill when they were healthy. He's going to get the football to Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I just don't see it. Is Kevin Stefanski all of a sudden, this coach that needs to have a veteran under center? It just seems that way when you think about the situation with Deshaun Watson. He felt more comfortable with Joe Flacco at 38 years old opening up the playbook than he ever did with Deshaun Watson. And that's not a knock on Cleveland. It's just, they were very limited and very conservative during Stefanski's tenure there when they had Deshaun Watson under center at quarterback. And again, when you look at this team and you look at the coaches that they have had, Raheem Morris and Arthur Smith, pedestrian that couldn't get over the hump and dominate the NFC South and couldn't make the playoffs, they have the potential now to elevate to a team that can win 10, 11 games and make a run with the right quarterback. You have a live arm in Michael Penix. Yes, he's been injury prone, but in my opinion, he gives this offense the best ability to stretch defenses over the top and vertically. And oh, by the way, hasn't dealt with concussion issues the way Tua has. Tua, made it through the regular season. That's great, but that was on grass. Now you're bringing him back to turf, and one hit this whole season could go sideways. So why would you risk that? I would have Tua as the backup and put all your eggs in Michael Penix with a new head coach that potentially could elevate this team to a division championship.
I am so intrigued by this battle. But Joe, I got to tell you, listen, man, I'd love to come in. I'd love to give you a take.
Yeah.
I don't this is why to me, this is just a true battle. Like if I were on this coaching staff, I'd be like, listen, every 10 reps, new guy. I don't know because first of all, I love that they're both lefties. I do love that. Okay. It keeps the eye line the same for the receivers. I don't know why, but I really, really like that. But they both have health concerns. Different, But the Penix stuff is real, Joe. You know this going back to college, right? He wasn't the model of health during his collegiate career. Part of the reason he was in college for so long, all in all, when you think about it, right, Joe? So I don't think Penix is clear-cut. I do think that the organization is giving up on him a little bit quick, but let's be real. The guys responsible for Michael Penix being an Atlanta Falcon are all gone. And they don't really seem to care that it might be giving up on Michael Penix a bit quick. Listen, I think if you said, hey, Kev, you got to decide, no beat around the bush, I think that they should be hoping Penix wins this job and giving Penix another chance to actually be the guy here in Atlanta. I do. But if Tua would you be stunned if Tua just won the job? Just had a better camp than Michael Penix? I can't say I'd be stunned by that.
Wouldn't be stunned, but I'd be slightly shocked. I mean, I just think
really,
from ability, I do. I think Penix is a much better passer at this point in his career. I just do. I just think Michael Penix has a more explosive arm. I think he's able to at least stretch defenses over the top. And I think Tua, again, under pressure has crumbled. And so now you have a running back in Bijan Robinson that could be that Saquon Barkley type of player. He could certainly be an MVP candidate. You have two wide receivers that could take games over. We've seen that. I just go back to Michael Penix was drafted in the first round. You had a defensive-minded head coach in Raheem Morris that never gave him a shot to live up to his ability. And now you have an offensive-minded coach in Kevin Stefanski with his play calling and his philosophy potentially could elevate this team to the next level, and you're going to start Tua over the young kid. It's a disservice.
Yeah, I don't know, Joe. It's tough for me, though, because Tua might be better. And quarterback's the most important position, but am I giving up on Penix too quickly that I don't believe there's a world he turns this around? Maybe so. But I think that's why I'm open to the world that Tua wins this job. I think it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be really fun to follow. I also wouldn't be super surprised. Let me drop this on you right before the break. I wouldn't be surprised if I invest in some Falcon futures, regardless of who the starting quarterback is. Sunday Night Football next. Pro Football Today, back with you guys right here. Kevin Walsh, Joe Lisi. Joe, the schedule is going to be releasing this week, but also leaking. I think it's like a self-leak that the NFL does. And one thing they wanted to let people know right away is that the Sunday night football calendar will begin with the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. My takeaway is the league better be right that Harbaugh is going to turn the Giants around, because it looks like we may get quite a few big blue games on prime time.
It's possible, Kevin. Now, we talked about John Harbaugh being brought in for the New York Giants with a $100 million price tag, $20 million a year. Isn't just to bring viewers and fans into the seats during the regular season, right? It's to bring fans into the playoffs and potentially win an NFC championship. And if you remember this game last year, this is one of Russell Wilson's breakout performances, right? Threw for over 400 yards. The game goes into overtime. It's just complete fireworks. So now these are two teams potentially set up to make not only wild card appearances, but potentially make a run at the Philadelphia Eagles for a division title. We'll see how it plays out. But for week one, to have Harbaugh and the Giants in a primetime setting just tells you how the league feels for the Giants and Big Blue moving forward this year.
Yeah, I think the schedule makers must be eyeing up the 7.5 Giants win total, thinking it's a misprint from bookmakers here. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch the expectations shift potentially even during this offseason, Joe. Remember, a lot of Giants fans were excited about bringing Harbaugh in so they could win 8, 9, 10 games. And I've often told, Giant fans, I don't believe you that that's what you think you're after. 9-7, hooray, thank you, Harbaugh. I don't. I think they can win an NFC East crown. I know Dallas thinks they can win an NFC East crown. And that's why when you do get games like this, Joe, to open a season, it's very exciting for fans. But of the two fan bases, it's a lot of pressure. I don't think that can be overstated. I remember 2 seasons ago, the Philadelphia Eagles opened the year in Brazil against Green Bay. And, most of us, man, history of sports media, everybody already knows. Like, I had picked the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. But, man, I thought week 1 was super important. I thought they had to come out of the gates hot and win that game against Green Bay in Brazil. And they did just that. And you don't have to win week 1 in order to win the Super Bowl. Last year's Seahawks, I believe, lost week 1 to San Francisco. So that's a divisional game. It's at home. But I think there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on both the Giants and the Cowboys, Joe. So the loser's going to feel the weight of that loss quite a bit.
Oh, they will. And anytime you lose a divisional matchup in week number 1, it's okay to lose a game, but to then already be behind in the division after week 1 is a little demoralizing. And that being said, I mean, it's used as a measuring stick as well. Jackson Dart, second year with a new head coach, the optimism, the fanfare, the hype surrounding the Giants this season with a new head coach to change, just the unsuccessful nature of this organization over the past 4 or 5 seasons. And on the flip side for Dallas, with Schottenheimer, they were close. They almost made the playoffs, right? But they knock off Philadelphia at the end of the year in their building after trailing 21-0. This is a team that's set up, at least offensively, that could go toe-to-toe with anybody, not just in the NFC, but in all of the NFL. They just need to shore up the defensive side of the ball. And if you could get a jump in the division on week number 1, now all of a sudden we see market overreaction, especially depending upon margin of victory, right? Giants are already 1.5-point dogs in the matchup. They get blown out, let's just say week 1 with Harbaugh. Dallas all of a sudden could jump significantly in the NFC market, Kevin.
I'll ask you this, Joe. We'll end here. 4 round 1 picks in this game. Arvell Reese, Francis Maui-Noah for the Giants, Caleb Downs, and Malachi Lawrence for the Cowboys. who would you expect to be the biggest week one contributor of those 4 football players?
I would say Caleb Downs. He's a ball hawk. And again, if Dallas is going to make that run, they're going to shut down the passing attack of Jackson Dart and every other team in the NFC East, Kevin. So I think it's Caleb Downs. He's the most NFL ready right here, right now.
I'm really excited to see where things land for Francis Mauigoa. Where do they slot him in on that offensive line? And let's remember a guy who some thought might drop, and maybe you could argue did on draft day due to a back injury. That kind of popped up throughout this process, ultimately does go 10th to New York. And that is where we will be on a Sunday night in September. We'll see you next time on Pro Football Today.
We are going to be strapped with a whole lot of bad football, watching mediocre teams that have absolutely no business in the postseason getting blown off the field by the elite heavyweights, all for our viewing pleasure. They are even willing to trample right over the historic Army-Navy game, which apparently, we'll figure out at one point where we can play this game.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I don't blame David Stearns at all for looking at the team and saying, hey, look, with this high payroll and with all the players we have, Donnie, they have not won anything. They did not even get in the postseason last year. So they're like, all right, let's break it up and try something new. But their new plan has not worked. It doesn't look good on paper. It doesn't look good in the standings. Even if the Mets were to play okay the rest of the season, I think their season is a wrap.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Hey there, it's your buddy Craig Carton. If you're trying to find out how to get all the great content that me and Tyrone Johnson give you every single day, here's Tyrone to tell you how.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, Amazon Music as well. We're at all 4.
That's right. It's the Craig Carton Show podcast every weekday morning live at 11, replayed at noon on YouTube and on SportsGrid throughout the country. Check it out.
Betting growth was up about 40% year over year in March. So some of that obviously was the NCAA tournament, but a lot of that is because DraftKings and FanDuel were coming to town and bringing a lot of money with them. It was about $87 million was bet in the month of March, which is not only a March record, but it's a record for Arkansas in general. And it was really interesting to note too, DraftKings and FanDuel were only active for about 12 days.
Newswire, only